Well, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I've got some notes to refer back to. I want to tie in a little bit of what he was saying about tracking. Tracking almost seems a little boring compared to this stuff, so let me see if I can get us tracking into this. He's just dreaming. I wanted to start at one place about the warrior because he's a good place to start, and the comment that was made last night about, I remember the first men's conference that I went to in Mendocino, and Robert got up and he said, we're going to make a vow that there's no physical things that happen here, because when men get together, there's always the possibility of a physical confrontation. And it made me think of a line from a Gary Snyder poem. It's in Turtle Island, and I forget which poem it is. Sorry, Gary, one of you might know. But he makes the comment that senseless slaughter is not the work of wolves, but of hysterical sheep. Okay, now that's an important point, because a natural man has all these things happening. And a natural man also knows that he lives in the world, and living in the world, he takes from the flow of life to live. So I do a lot of teaching with a lot of different sorts, from the hunters to the vegetarians. And it's important to just realize the vegetarians very often by the second day without food are the ones spotting out the squirrels for me. Get one of those. And I tell them, no, it tastes like it. Acorn, So there is, when you train your warrior, the thing about a martial artist is they don't go looking for fights. That's the thing about a martial artist. And you meet men all the time in your life who say, I'm really scared, John. I had a fight with this guy and I really destroyed him. I couldn't believe the energy that came out of me, and I went crazy. It was like I went off, went out of it. When you learn how to deal with that energy, that's what a warrior is. A warrior is not an indiscriminate slaughterer. A warrior is a balanced, fine piece of work. And it's important when whoever said that last night, that was a really great comment, because what you're looking for is that balance. That gives you the ability to run up and down these different spaces. So when you have that presence of mind, you can see where you are. That's what the warrior can see. Now, I talk about animals, and I'm going to be talking about tracking animals, and you could track animals to touch them, you can track animals to watch them, you can track them just to put your mind against them. You're going to come up against, now let's not just track a mountain lion, you're going to track yourself. You want to track where you're at here, you want to track your childhood, just to get a clearer picture, to be realistic about it. You're going to be up against some wild animals, some real wild animals. And you're going to have that warrior sense, which is a truth, like a sword that cuts through. When you're out in the bush, sometimes you have to take an animal. In the summertime, there's a lot of plants. You don't take animals. Sometimes they've got bugs on them. You don't eat rabbits in the summer. You wait until the fall. Well, there's a way of taking an animal that is a warrior's way. And I have a little poem here that I copied down from the Six Nations Indian Museum. It's a Mohawk prayer that a warrior would say to an animal that he had killed. And it goes something like this. Our father spoke to the animals they had killed like this. I'm sorry I had to kill you, little brother, but I had need of your meat. My children were hungry and crying for food. Forgive me, little brother. I honor your courage, your strength, and your beauty. Each time I pass this place, I will remember you and do honor to your spirit. Forgive me, little brother. See, I smoke to your memory. I burn tobacco. See, now that's good stuff. There is a way of taking something from the flow of life, and that is the warrior's way. And the Creator is not displeased with that. It's not an indiscriminate slaughter. So I want to use that as an attitude, because that's the attitude of the tracker. There's a great reverence and there's a great sadness in the tracker and in the warrior and in the hunter. And Robert and I were talking all yesterday. We've been laughing. We had the conference on the way up in the car. We were waiting around for everyone to get here, and we were ready to kick on. We'd had the conference. We were ready to go home. Ready to drink. Because what we were talking about is being in a state of prayer. And this tracking that I'm going to get into in a second is how to walk across this earth as if you were a prayer. To bless the earth with your footstep. If you're not in prayer, you're in chaos. If you're not in a state where you could be reverent about this world, then you have not become fully aware of this world, or you would see a prayer all around you. So this attitude that I'm discussing is also very prayerful. When you're not there, it's very confusing. The tracker's great question is very simple. What happened here? What happened here? You note a happening on the ground. You come to an area of the forest and it's all torn up. It's all ripped up, and there's mud on the trees to a height of this height. All around a clearing. And there's claw marks and scratchings on the ground. I've come to this spot, and so I asked myself, what happened here? Well, this is the men who respect the ant. You get down on your knees, and you put your nose down near the ground. It's a very humbling experience. Your breast, right on the breast of the Mother Earth, and you begin to look for tiny signs, scratchings and claw marks. There's claw marks there. How many? Looks like 5 on this one. There's just certain animals that have 5 toes on their feet. Not the dog family. They're 4 in the front and 4 in the back. Not the cat family. 4 in the front, 4 in the back. It could be in the rodent family. It could be a bear. It could be of the weasel family. So the tracker goes into his detective mode, Sherlock Holmes. He begins to look at the evidence in a very hard, cold way, yet also allowing his mind to be open to things that he's never seen before. You must be also in the intuitive mind. So you must actually, you might have heard that primitive people are in one hemisphere or the other. Very balanced in the way they track. Because all the primitive people are trackers. And women are trackers too. As they gather the plants, they note the tracks on the ground. And they tell their husbands, or the men, because they're part of the tribe too. Well, that particular little spot, after I'd stayed there for an hour or 2, and that's why trackers can't say I'm going to be home at 4, because you don't go out saying I'm going to go track deer and be back in 2 hours. You never know what you're going to find, what mystery lies just outside the window here. 18 things you've never seen before in your own backyard. Well, that turned out to be a bear had been digging up a hornet's nest. And they like to eat the hornets. They found they didn't just eat honey, they eat the bees in the honey too. We all know that insects are real rich. And that turned out to have been a bear, and scratching up that nest, it kicked that dirt way up against those trees. We found the bear claws, and with the closer look, with that ant vision, we found bear hairs. So we backed up that theory. And then we came home and we felt really great. That's a good day tracking. To find a mystery and then to follow it. And then if we'd really been good, we would have found the tracks leading from that spot and tracked that bear till we find him standing in the tracks. That's very successful. And then you're thinking that you're walking through those bushes and there's a bear there. Y'all know what bears are like. They're very unpredictable and they're very powerful. They're very humorous, curious. You might meet them at any moment. And that's why you learn the martial arts. For the awareness, for getting down and going through the bushes, for having your hands up in case something comes at you. And that's the warrior. So the tracker also has a lot of that warrior in it. And you got a lot of feeling for a bear, especially if it's a mother bear. It's not just you against a male bear. It might be a mama bear, her cubs. See? So you're really looking at a very complex model. Well, that's just to get into this mode a little bit. The tracking that I've learned, just to tell you, I'm not a master tracker, because I met a master tracker. And that was this old fellow that went out with me, Jimmy James in Australia, 100%. You give him a job and he'll find them. Now, he was of a very high degree. Even among the Aborigines, they said, Uncle Jimmy can track a fish underwater. Okay, this guy's good. I'm a teacher who has learned the principles of tracking, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life practicing so that I could be good like him. But I'm not a tracker like he's a tracker. He's a real tracker. Okay? He'll find a person. He could track from a moving car going up to 100 miles an hour. He likes when the police go real fast. Faster, he says. He's getting away. Yoo! He'll be laughing in the back seat. There's a little short man with black skin and a black hat and a black jacket. He's got black eyes with black pupils. And he doesn't miss a trick. And then he'll say, turned off, stop the car, turn it around. Then he'd take him back and he'll show him. He was reading that man's tracks from a car going 100 miles an hour. Little bent twigs and sticks. He says that man's getting tired. He's just over the hill. He's eating something. Y'all go get him. I don't want to see his face. See? That's something else, that kind of tracking. So this is the beginning. What you could do with these tips is start to practice now, and you could become that good. These are the principles of tracking. This is from myself and from Tom Brown. Tracking is not necessarily a lost art or something. Tracking is just a worldview. And when you become a tracker, you can go anywhere. You can go to Antarctica and the principles are the same. You can go to the moon and the principles are the same. Every action has an opposite reaction. You find a track and there's dirt squirted out here. The animal went that way. You go underwater and you look at a heron track underneath the water in the shallows right down here on the lake. And you'll be able to read he went that way. You go to the moon and you see where one of those astronauts jumped. You can read which way he jumped. You get a fossil of a dinosaur walking across Arizona. You can read it just the same. Okay, you can take this principle and read it anywhere. And then we're going to take it inside and we're going to read the track inside. Okay, because it's the same. That's why you tell your kid this and he does that. It's got an equal and opposite reaction. It's a principle and it cannot be avoided. Everything leaves a track. That's after what happened here, that's the first principle. Everything leaves a track. That lake out there is the track of a what? Of a glacier. You ever tracked a glacier before? You could start tracking that glacier. When you start to read the big tracks like that, you can begin to orient yourself in time and space. You learned that the glacier came down from the north and then went back up, and you're moving over some ridges and you're moving this way. You don't need to know what way's east. Those things run north-south, so you already got your direction. You're tracking a glacier. Okay? You begin to read the ground, and it is pumice. Well, now what are you tracking? You're tracking a volcano. You're tracking the lava that flowed from the volcano in the caldera, and that's the same principle. You might be tracking an elk across the pumice. See? Now you're tracking an elk and a volcano. Same time, and they're playing together. So everything leaves the track. There's a track on his, everything he's done is the track on his face, a track on his body. Some people know how to track the way a person stands as to how they breathe. That is also tracking. Everything leaves a track. Okay? And we've covered this one, but I'll say it. Using the tips of tracking, you can track anything. So we could look at the Dark Ages or at the year 453, and we could use our knowledge of tracking, and we can understand how things happen. You can go out into the desert, and I do this a lot, and I know those guys like to make arrowheads, and the men would sit around and make arrowheads together. And so you sit, and where would I sit if I wanted to make an arrowhead? And there's a real nice overlook, and you go look there, and sure enough, there's arrowheads all over the ground because they wanted to make arrowheads same places you would enjoy making arrowheads. And that's another principle of tracking, is that you read from your body out. If you would shorten your stride to go up a hill, so would another animal, and so would another man. So the tracks get closer. So you can use your own personal experience to track something else. Downhill, you might have to zigzag a little bit. You might hop in a bound, and the bear does the same, and the deer does the same. Okay, so you read from your body and your personal experience out. Tracking is nothing more than good observation. Tom Brown would say, how many of you have seen a robin? Everybody raise their hand. I'm going to draw a robin up here, and I'm going to give you a crayon. I'd like you to mark the 13 dark feathers. Then nobody want to get up. And he says, well, you never saw a robin. You just think you saw a robin. You never took the time to really look at it. Okay? The tracker just notices what's there. And one time Tom took we're looking at some tracks in the Pine Barrens. He took a 2x4 and he says, want to see what happened 5 years ago? And he took that and stuck it about this far down in the ground, a ½ inch, and he pulled back that top ½ inch of dirt. And there was the tracks from 5 years ago in the sand, darker sand on light sand. Deer tracks, weasel tracks. Let's go back 10 years, he said. And he peeled back another layer. And there were more tracks, because the track of the deer, you see it on the top, but that goes way down inside. The pressure of the animal has compacted the earth way below. And that's why the Indian people said a fox cannot walk over the back of the turtle. That track is not felt everywhere. That's why the tracker walks as if he's blessing the earth, because if you stomp on the earth, something happens somewhere else. Okay? And then we also discussed yesterday, you base yourself in nature, because anytime you get lost, you can walk back out there and find where you are. It's close at hand. You don't have to go to a library that's in Cincinnati. Okay, you could just walk right out the door and find the proof or the fallacy of the thing you're talking about, as long as you stay in nature. Nature moves in concentric rings. You see the Aboriginal cave paintings, the circles. You go down to where I live, and you'll see petroglyphs on the rock. Everything moves in concentric circles. The tracker's job is to read the rings coming in and to quiet the rings going out. What I mean by that is, when a big flock of seagulls comes across this, and they come right to a tree where a hawk is, you hear the hawk start crying. Now, if you knew the hawk, the way he screams at seagulls, you'd be able to say seagulls are attacking the hawk. You might not know that. But the hawk flies off, and he's screaming the whole time, and that disturbs the deer. And the deer looks up. And that makes the squirrel stop running, because he was watching the deer, and when the squirrel moves, he knows something's happening. And when the squirrel stopped, that made the blue jay squeak. And you're way down there, and each one of those is a ring. And if you're a good tracker, you would read all that coming in. And then you're full of all these psychic tensions and craziness from the modern world. You go out walking in the woods, and all the animals are psychic. Everybody knows that who spends time in the woods. It's not just your dog when you're going to take him to the vet. It's all animals are psychic. And they feel you coming. So if you want to be an effective tracker and to move in a quiet way, you have to learn an inner camouflage and quiet your own mind. Because if you could sneak past the blue jays and the kingfishers, who always fly down the trail ahead of you telling everyone you're coming, they're the sentries of the forest. So if you can sneak past them, now you're inside the inner sanctum. And now you walk up on deer who didn't hear you coming. Now you watch an owl who didn't know you were there doing his thing. Now you get to see the mysteries. Now the forest reveals itself to you because you have made yourself worthy of coming inside. Okay? So you see how, and not just that. At any moment you can read the rings coming in or going out. If somebody began to do something back there and one man turned, and he just kept turned around, then another man would turn, another man would turn, another man would turn, until finally Michael would look over, and I'd know Michael looking over, and there'd be those rings again. It works that way. Nobody makes it work that way. It just works that way. Okay, I'm going to do like 2 more, and then I'll call it a break. The shadow is so important to everything that we've been doing here and to the things that Robert talks about, and we all know what that is. Let's talk about our physical shadow right now. If I find a track on the ground, you put the track between you and the source of light. You read the track into the light, okay? The sun's over there, I wouldn't stand on this side of the track. I would come around. And that way the sun shines down into the track and gives greater shadowing so that I can read more intimate things in the track. It's not enough to just say it's a deer track. Is it the front or the rear foot? Is it the right or the left? Is it a male or a female? Was it walking or it running? When did it come by? What was it doing when it went by? What was it thinking? That's what's fun, right? Reading the subtleties. Okay? Well, if you stand on that side of the track, your shadow gets on the track. Okay, now take it inside. Don't let your shadow fall on the track. Keep the track between you and the source of light. You can call that source of light anything you want. Revelation or illumination or the truth. But you want to keep your shadow behind you when you're tracking yourself. And the last principle that I'm going to give is the idea of a macro-micro vision. Macro-micro vision means that you come up and you're walking along and you find a track on the ground. You don't just go right down to it. You take a moment and you look around and you read where you are. And you say, I'm in a glacial valley. I'm in upstate Minnesota. I'm on the side of a hill, and I'm in the middle of such and such trees, some pines, and it's a mix. And now you come down. And now you look a little bit closer, the next ring in, and you say, well, I'm sort of in a little open area just above a water hole on the side of this hill in this glacial valley. And now you get down and you look at the track. You don't just look at the track, you look at the ground this big around the track, because sometimes there will be, when you push real hard, you'll see the ground actually crack and make fissure marks. Well, those are called pressure releases, and you can read from that the weight of the animal and his behavior. So you read that ring right around the track, and now you go down to the track. And you look at it, and you look real carefully. A lot of deer tracks aren't just one track. The deer takes its rear foot, puts it right in where the front foot was, and if you look carefully, you'll see it's both tracks. It's called direct register. And so you don't get 4 tracks, you get 2 here and 2 here. It looks like a 2-legged walking instead of a 4-legged. And the cats all do it. They put their smaller rear foot inside the larger front foot, and it looks like 1 track. In fact, it's 2. So you read all this, and then you come back out. And you say, oh, it was a deer, a male. Because the front legs are out wider than the back legs means he's got a big chest. Women don't have that. They got the opposite. Wider behind than in the front. Oh, it's a male deer. A while ago, yesterday, moving across here, going down the water hole, coming across here, and you come back up out of that, back into this macro vision. And now you've sort of gone in and come back out, and you got a whole range of information now. If you just stay down like this, you miss all the things that's happening. Something real funny's happening in this track, but since you didn't stand up and notice, that there is cat tracks over there, and the reason the deer track looks funny is because the deer saw the cat, made him start and jump. You're still down here trying to figure out what's so funny about this track. So you haven't seen the next level out. And that's what happens in academia a lot, is people are just reading micro or macro. No, really, anytime you get hung up, then you have to move out a level or move in a level, and just that motion is what I think Robert called a leaping motion of the brain. You actually begin to leap brains. And that new information and that motion gives you a lot. Yeah. Oh, good. So that principle, you could take that anywhere you want, but that's about 7. That's about half of them. Okay? Did you have any questions on those? Yes.
When you're tracking your child, if you find him, do you kill him?
That's a really good question. I'll tell you, we were just talking outside, and just personal experience and personal the interplay between the mother, the father, the child, and the elders when someone's about to be initiated is a very complicated dance. It's not so simply put as the kid dies. The mother generally drives the boy out of the house or makes this impassioned plea for his life. The elders say the boy must die. The boy must die. And the mother says, oh, my little boy, that beautiful little kid, does he really have to die? The boy must die. The boy dies that night. No pity. Why should there be any? You're making him into a man. What's he going to be sad about it? Right? And what I'm getting at is, I think it's hard to kill your own child because it would be contrary to the laws of survival. To kill your own child, you get somebody to do it for you. If I found my little kid sleeping under a tree, I'd go get my buddy who's in Kenjutsu and I'd tell him where he was. And I'd have him cut his head off. It's too hard to do it yourself. And you don't really want to take the sword against yourself. So that's what I would do. Call in someone. Call in the elders. They don't have any pity. They want you to be a man.
There's a question back there.
Yeah. Hey. But there's a lot to that. We could really go through the process of initiation and how certain people do it. But it involves the mother. It's not just the... And you can't tell your mother, I'm going to kill my... Mom, I found my child, I'm going to kill him. Well, that doesn't work. So you really do need that process, that initiatory process in place, and elders in place, and someone who knows that this is a good process.
Richard,
yeah, Richard.
If you're going to track your child, how would you do it?
Well, if he's still around, he won't be hard to find. That's a truism. If you he's just turn around real fast, and you'll probably catch him. Thank you.